All right, we're back with the Fox News Alert. Get this, Empire actor Jussie Smollett on bond now. He is out and maintaining his innocence after Chicago police accuse him in elaborate detail of a hate crime against himself.
The president tweeting, quote, Jussie Smollett, what about MAGA and the tens of millions of people you insulted with your racist and dangerous comments? Hashtag Make America Great Again.
Let's go to the North Lawn of the White House, and Sarah Sanders, the president's press secretary, joins us live. Good morning to you, Sarah.
Hey, Sarah.
Good morning. Great to be with you guys this morning.
Great to have you as well. This Jussie Smollett story is so troubling. Why did the president put out that tweet?
Look, I think there were so many people, including a lot of leadership from the Democrat Party, everybody from Nancy Pelosi, Cory Booker, and a number of others, mostly those that are running for president, that quickly came out and attacked the president, blamed the president. And in fact, as we learn more, it certainly seems like the only person to blame in this case is Smollett. And it's another sad example of people so quick to want to attack and come after this president, much like you saw with the Covington kids and certainly with this case as well. And the president's pushing back.
What about this? He's going to Vietnam next week to meet with Kim Jong-un, and they're calling it Summit 2.0. What can you expect?
Look, I think you can expect continued conversations between the two leaders. We've seen progress since the beginning of this administration. When the president first took over, we were at great odds with North Korea. We're finally making progress. We're not seeing missiles being tested and flying over other countries. The remains are coming home. The hostages were released. And look, we've got a long way to go, and we'll see what happens. But we're continuing to make progress, and this is another great step for the president and Chairman Kim to be able to sit down and continue those conversations.
Well, and interesting, do you think the expectations have risen to the point where the president's got to walk away with something, or the criticism will be greater than the praise? And if so, has the ground been plowed for him to do it? And I know the North Koreans want us to give in any area. Are we prepared to give it all?
Look, we've kept the sanctions on throughout the process. We're going to continue to keep them on until the president makes a decision that that's not necessary anymore. Again, we're making progress. The president's in no hurry, particularly as long as things continue to move forward in a positive manner and as long as the conversations continue to go well. Again, we'll see what happens. I think that the only one setting high expectations is probably the media, because they're looking for reasons to attack this president. They hate the idea that he's done so well on something his predecessors couldn't do anything on. He's had a great success here in the fact that they were able to even sit down at the table. The fact he's able to do it again is in itself a big success.
And I'd just like to add, the Washington Post, of all places, does cite some places in which the North Koreans have shown some changes. They found that North Korea actually halted key elements of its weapons program and decreasing the threat in the area. And he got rid of 4 people to Kim Jong-un. Many people think some of those 4 people were standing in the way of progress between our two countries.
Absolutely. Like I said, we're continuing to make progress, but we're certainly not naive in the process, and the president's going to take things one step at a time.
All right. The #1 story for the longest time has been that this president, this administration, colluded with the Russians to win. Of course, we haven't seen any evidence of collusion thus far, but the story out there now is it sounds like Robert Mueller is wrapping up his probe. You know, there have been stories that the staff on the special counsel's office has been reduced. Rod Rosenstein, who had said that he was going to stick through until it's released, is about to go. What is the White House's, what are you hearing from people at the Department of Justice?
Look, we're seeing the same reports that you are, that it's possible that this is coming to a conclusion, that in his report will be finished. And we feel good about the fact that what we've said all along for the last 2 years will be clear. There was no collusion. I mean, the idea that President Trump needed to collude with Russia in order to beat Hillary Clinton is frankly laughable. He was an infinitely better candidate with a better message, and he outworked her. That's why he won. It had nothing to do with Russia or any other country for that matter. It had to do with the fact that he was simply better than she was.
Sarah, the White House says that the U.S. is keeping 200 American troops in Syria after the pullout. It's a small peacekeeping force. Why? Will you elaborate on that? Why do they do this? Or why are you guys doing this?
Again, this is a rough estimate, about 200, not a specific number. We're in constant contact with our allies. We're going to continue to be in communication with them. At the end of the day, the president wants to bring our troops home, and he's working towards that. He wants to do that in a safe and peaceful way, in the best way possible, to make sure that we have complete safety for our troops that are abroad.
Is the president concerned that Michael Cohen is going to be testifying publicly on Wednesday about his business, how he interacted with the president in business, even before he ran for president?
I don't think the president has any concerns whatsoever about Michael Cohen. I think Michael Cohen may need to be concerned for himself, but that's certainly something that's not influencing or bothering us in this building.
If he starts talking about with the big things that a lawyer-client deal with over the past 12 years, we know the president's had a lot of litigation in the past. Michael Cohen's been all over that. That doesn't concern the president at all?
Look, that's a problem that he's going to have to deal with if he breaks and violates some type of client-lawyer privilege. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to try to get into what that looks like. What I can tell you is the president's very confident in what he has and hasn't done, and he's not concerned about Michael Cohen.
All right. Sarah Sanders, always a pleasure. Thank
Thanks,
you very
Sarah.
much for joining us. Have a nice weekend.
Nice slow week.
Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Deadly violence breaking out along the border of Venezuela and Brazil over Venezuela's humanitarian crisis. At least 2 people were killed and about a dozen injured. Opposition leader Juan Guaido plans to bring aid into Venezuela tomorrow in defiance of embattled dictator Nicolas Maduro. Joining me now is former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski. Corey, great to see you. Thanks for being here. I wanted to start talking to you about what the president has done internationally, because, again, he is clearly leading. The United States is leading the way on so many things in the world. Without nation building, we don't want to get involved in that again, but we don't want to lead from behind the way we had with the previous administration. You look at what's happened with our NATO allies, forcing them to step up to the plate with their own defense. With Venezuela, what's happening there? Instead of just sitting back and saying, we can't do anything about it, we get involved and try to do something about it. Same with ISIS in Syria. Same with North Korea. Is this something that's going to be emphasized leading into the 2020 re-election campaign?
Well, it will be emphasized by the campaign, but obviously not by most of the media. They don't want to give this president the credit for once again exerting American dominance on the world stage and reminding everybody of how great of a superpower we are, but encouraging them to come along with us. This country was the first country to call on Maduro to leave. This country is going to put the coalition together to put 20 and 30 and 40 other nations to join with us to bring change to Venezuela. Donald Trump is the one who went to the UN and said, you have to pay your fair share. And our friends in the media laughed at us. They said he's embarrassing our allies around the world. But listen to what has happened. $100 billion more in the coffers of world organizations because our friends are finally paying their fair share. This is the president leading the world as it's supposed to be done.
And you mentioned the media. I hate to say it, but you think of 2 stories next week. The president in Vietnam with the North Korean leaders trying to get them to denuclearize, this time with some real substance as a result of these talks, really going out of his way to make the world a more peaceful place. And these hearings with Michael Cohen, his discredited lawyer in Washington, kind of a show trial, or it is going to be a show of a certain kind. What do you think the media is going to give more attention to? Something that's completely insignificant, or something that has deep significance, not just for us, but for the whole world?
Well, look, they should be focusing on the world peace and the fact that denuclearizing North Korea should be the priority, and many others have tried it. Donald Trump is going to achieve it. But you and I both know the salacious, false accusations and comments that Michael Cohen is going to go up to Capitol Hill and make is what the media is going to cover. As opposed to giving this president the credit that he deserves, they're going to focus on a man who has now been convicted of lying to Congress, a man who is a convicted felon is going to jail. That's what the media is going to focus on. They don't want to focus on the good work that this president is doing overseas and here domestically.
Let's talk about the rough and tumble of politics going into the 2020 election. We don't see much of a middle ground in the Democratic Party anymore. I mean, it's almost all to the left, from the far left to the socialist left. Is that making Trump re-election folks happy, the fact that they have so isolated themselves in this one left-wing corner? Does that make them easier to beat from your perspective?
Well, I think if you look, can you imagine for 1 second if Donald Trump had honeymooned in the USSR, the former Soviet Union, like Bernie Sanders did? Think of the media outcry. But the point is this. Middle America, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, the places that Donald Trump won that many other Republicans couldn't win, will never vote for the socialism agenda that the Democrats are now pushing. They don't believe, nor do I, that you redistribute people's wealth. That may fly in California and in Massachusetts, where Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren are from, respectively, but it doesn't work in Middle America. So if they become the nominee of their party, I'm going to predict Donald Trump wins an even bigger electoral victory than he did the last time.
You know, you may well be right, Corey, but I am concerned about the younger people in America. It's interesting that Ronald Reagan, who was an old guy when he was elected, and even older, of course, when he was reelected, had a great amount of support from young people. A lot of people thought because of the age difference there that he wouldn't have much support. It turned out he had a great amount of support from young people. But that was 35 years ago. Since then, we have a whole new generation that's been educated by left-wing elites in colleges, not just the Ivy Leagues, but all through colleges. You think of Ocasio-Cortez. She was from Boston University. That's where she got her economics degree, which led her to be a socialist. I mean, it's kind of frightening to think of the new generation and what has happened to them in terms of how they've been educated, isn't it?
Well, it's scary because I understand what those institutions are teaching. You don't see conservatives being offered fellowships at large, well-known institutions. It just doesn't happen. But let me tell you what Donald Trump is doing. He is bringing the African-American population back to the Republican Party. What he's done on criminal justice reform, what he's done by putting people back to work, cuts across the demographics and the socioeconomic status, and they're going to turn out in record numbers for this president come 2020. And if that happens, the Democrats should be scared to death, because if Donald Trump gets 10% of the African-American vote in the next election, there's no path for the Democrats.
Well, and Corey, don't forget the Latin American vote. I mean, everybody thinks because he's tough on border security, the Latins hate him. Not true. I'm very tied into the Latin American community. I know it well. I covered Latin America for 12 years. He's got a lot of support among Latin Americans who came to the United States for the right reasons to work here. They've established roots. They rebuilt Miami. There are a lot of people that in the Latin American community who support Donald Trump. Final last word. Go ahead.
Well, and that's because he is tough on illegal immigration. The people that came here legally don't want to see illegals coming and taking their jobs. They're with this president on securing our border, and they will turn out in the 2020 election.
Corey Lewandowski, always a pleasure, Corey. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.